We're ready.
We're on. Welcome, everybody. September the 27th, 9 a.m. We're going to open this meeting up and call it to order. Is there any additions to the calendar?
There are no additions.
No additions? Okay. You read the items in closed session.
Yes, Chair and members of the board, good morning. Thank you. There are 3 items listed on the agenda. However, my request to the board is to push item 2C as in cat, Highway 41 to October 4th, and this would be the last push if the board is okay with it prior to mediation on that case. The 2 items otherwise for closed session are your conference with labor negotiators under Government Code 54957.6. Your agency designated representatives are Joel Bulgay, Michelle May, and Susan Carter. The employee organization is all units. Unrepresented employees are all classifications, excluding elected officials. The other item is under Government Code Section 54956.9, anticipated litigation. There's one case. I have the prior agenda. I apologize for the pause there. It is significant exposure to litigation under 54956.9 subsection D2. Thank you.
Okay. Any public comment? If none, let's go into closed session.
We're ready.
Ready? You ready, Brett? Perfect. Well, welcome everybody on this 27th day of September. Got a little over a half inch, and somebody told me they got an inch down here of rain last week, so that was nice.
Anything comes after 5.
Is there any items from the closed session that you need to discuss?
Thank you, Chair. There is no reportable action from your closed session.
Okay, thank you so much. Reopen and closing in memory of anybody.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to open and close in memory of Gerald Wayne Cedarquist, who passed away last week unexpectedly. He was just here 2 weeks ago testifying at our last board meeting. Wayne was known as a very respectful, honest, just a great individual. He had the respect of everybody, and he worked very closely with our water department and Stephanie and the whole crew. And I believe that he was definitely a voice of reason, and so we're definitely going to miss Wayne. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Any other ones? Got any? You haven't got any? Okay. Invocation will be by Dave Halls from the Well. And Janice Gomes, would you do the Pledge of Allegiance today? Put you on the spot. You'll do his first.
We'll do the prayer first, and then that button. All right, now it's really good to be with you. Everybody ready? Let's pray. Father, we are so grateful that you are compassionate, you're gracious, you are slow to anger, you're abounding in love. And yet we also know you're just. And so we just admire the perfect balance of your character, of who you are. And so as we're in this room here today, I know a lot of important conversation, dialogue, decisions to be made. I just ask that this room, this place would be a place of justice and mercy, just as you are, and that our county would flourish because of that. So, Lord, we just cover this room, this place, with that heart and that desire. We love you. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Janice, very much. Number 4.
Public comment. The first 15 minutes of each regular session is set aside for members of the public to address the board on any matters under the jurisdiction of the board, but not appearing on the agenda. The board will not take any action on items presented under public comment. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Anyone addressing the board is asked to print their name clearly on the speaker sheet at the podium and state their name and county of residence for the record.
Morning.
Good morning. Michelle May with Human Resources. I wanted to take an opportunity to introduce Roman Noriega, who is our new incoming HR Director, Human Resources Director. And you had the opportunity to approve your resolution to appoint him a couple weeks ago. And so he's able to be here today. And so I wanted to introduce him and let him perhaps say a couple words about himself. Roman?
Welcome.
Thank you, Michelle. Good morning, board, CAO, council, staff, attendees. Again, my name is Roman Noriega. I am the newly appointed Human Resources Director for Madera County. Sorry, I couldn't stay for my appointment, but I was here. I couldn't stay for the whole meeting. It's an honor and privilege to serve my county, our county, as the Human Resources Director. I will serve with the highest level of ethics and professionalism. Will always strive to deliver best-in-class service, hopefully for many years. And I'm really, really excited to join the county and the HR team officially next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And Roman is homegrown. Madera.
I am.
Right.
Yeah.
Welcome
Go
home.
Yotes.
That's what we like.
Glad to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roman. Mark, is this on, that's not something that's not on the agenda? Okay, come on up then.
If it is, right.
No.
Well, good morning. I'm Mark Toole, resident of Madera County, and I believe I know 4 or 5 of the supervisors up there. What I'd like to discuss is how the 218 vote is being used. I believe it's not a fair way to let people know what's really happening. When something goes to vote, it needs to be a distinct, in this case, yes or no type vote. I talked with Brett Frazier several weeks ago about helping notify, like the people around us, what's coming up for a 218 vote. We didn't know. The trash detail, I got something in the mail on that, with the green waste deal. And by the way, I go to my mailbox, go over the garbage can, don't want it. I look at every piece. I didn't get anything on this water deal. So I would like to maybe hope that the county will avoid using the 218 vote system. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments that's not on the agenda? I got just a couple of things. The NRA is having a fundraiser dinner October the 22nd, Oakhurst. And I announced it last week. Our annual Fall Festival in Oakhurst, 29th year, is October 7th and 8th. So everybody's welcome to come to those. Any others? None. Move to the consent calendar. Oh, I'm sorry. We had, under public comments, we had 5 letters that were submitted by email, and they will be added to the record. So make sure that's on record. Okay? Consent calendar. Any questions from the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any public comment on the consent calendar? Being none? Roll call, please.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Chairman Wheeler?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
I didn't ask, was there any online on the public comment? Okay. Number item 6, 6A.
6A, update on progress of the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, projects and outreach efforts, and provide direction to staff.
Morning, Joe.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We have a quick visual. I'll just pull it up and we'll try to go through quick. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Joel Begay, County Administrative Office. On March 11, 2001, the American Rescue Plan Act was signed into law. Madera County received a direct federal allocation of just over $30 million. On January 25, 2022, your board directed staff to allocate $5 million out of this allocation of the county's ARPA allocation for projects in the most severely disadvantaged communities. These 5 communities were identified as Chuck Chance, Eastern Arcola, Fairmead, Lavina, and Ripperton. I'll wait until give the PowerPoint a chance to up.
Technology. Great when it works, and if it don't, well. Is it warming up, Angie? Anybody got a joke they want to say? Sing a song? Dave, you want to sing a song?
Not really. I don't feel much like singing today.
Oh, okay. Well, we're waiting on that. Now it's just Newsom vetoed a bill that was going to add more people to the San Joaquin Valley Air Board, and we already have 15 on it, and he wanted to add 2 or 4 more on it, which we don't really need because the 4 of them are already 2 or 4 already appointed by the governor, so he vetoed that bill, and that was really good. They did that, so. Working now?
We're working now.
Okay.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, yes. So since your board allocated the $5 million for severely disadvantaged communities, your staff has conducted 5 community meetings over the past, during the spring and summer. We did community meetings in Lavina, Chickchans, Fairmead, and did a combined community meeting for the communities of Eastern Arcola and Ripperton. With Lavina and Fairmead being fairly well attended, Chickchans, we did hold a street outreach. Admittedly, it was 106 degrees, but we did try to walk around and see if anybody's home, and were able to talk to 7 households. Staff also sent out surveys to every resident of each of these 5 communities, and we received 33 survey results. Based on the community feedback we received from the community meetings and the surveys, the top 4 community priorities for this ARPA allocation are as follows: sewer and water infrastructure, street lighting upgrades, broadband access, parks and recreation improvements. Staff is seeking direction from your board to move ahead in identifying cost estimates and projects related to the 4 community priorities, and to return to your board with a projected timeline and projected costs for projects in these communities. Staff would also like to note that in the area of broadband, since there's a larger broadband effort, we have connected with cal.net through who was already working with communities up in District 5 to combine the efforts, and they have applied for state and federal funding on behalf of 10 communities, which includes these 5 communities, with a high cost estimate as of now to be upwards of $1.5 million. Staff from General Services is working with them, and we're hoping to pair ARPA funding plus state and federal broadband funding that's already available to minimize the cost of broadband access for ARPA, and hopefully get all 10 communities that were identified have broadband access through cal.net. And with that, staff is available for any questions.
Any questions? I'm sorry, Larry. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Joel, for this presentation. I'm just curious, and for transparency purposes, how were these 5 identified?
So, excellent question, Supervisor. So we went with the Public Works Special District's definitions that they use, which is provided statewide based on income region, and we went with the classification they use for when they apply for grants to qualify them as severely disadvantaged, or for short SDACs. So we use the same terminology. But Supervisor, to your point, as we identify these projects, we know that there are communities that don't have broadband access, and while they may not be SDAC or DAC, we know there are low-income folks in those communities. So we are still looking at those. That's why we're, even in the area of broadband, we're looking at 10 communities, not just the 5. And it does include the communities in North Fork, Coarse Gold, Oakhurst, and I'm drawing a blank on but we are keeping those attention. So we're trying to get anybody who don't have access to rural broadband be able to, as part of the effort.
Okay, thank you. That's good to know. And then I do have one ask, if we can look into it, depending on where the dollar amounts go, but Madera County Food Bank is undergoing a huge project. They're relocating. They service every disadvantaged community in the county of Madera. They're going to a new location, and whatever, it's my ask of this board, whatever we can do on our part to assist with that, because they do, it's a countywide program. If we could look into that to support that effort.
Certain Supervisor, we can take a look into that. I will. Infrastructure projects are tricky in ARPA. There is a way, but with your board's direction today, we could reach out and see if there is anything we can fit that project under ARPA, and if anything, and then we'll make sure to return to your board, to vet any kind of proposals related to that out.
Okay.
That's very important, because that covers the whole county too.
Certainly, sir.
That's all for me. Thank you.
Any other questions? Then none. Any public comment on item 6A? None. What's your pleasure, board? Well, it's just, oh yeah, provide direction. You want to make a motion putting that in there?
What's the, can you read the? So we'll adopt, or I move to move forward with the 5 communities and adding the Madera County Food Bank.
Yes, Supervisors, it's moving forward with securing projects and a timeline for the 4 priorities for those 5 communities. And
Including
Food
the
bank.
Madera County Food
Yeah.
Bank.
Okay,
Second.
Roll call, please.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Chair,
Public comment?
Already did public comment.
No. We did?
Good.
Oh,
Yeah, you said public comment?
Nobody
Do
came
we
up.
have- I think there's.
I did it. So finish the roll call, or did you get it finished?
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
yes.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Chairman Wheeler?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
6B, please.
6B, Sheriff's Office Logistics Cash Flow Loan, as listed on the agenda.
Morning, Chairman, members of the board. Anthony Loza, County Administration, General Services, and Jorge Mendoza, Project Manager. Alrighty, the item we have before your board this morning is a request for approval of budget adjustments 2214 and 2215, which are required to transfer funds in the amount of $450,000 from the Rural Sheriff's Fund to the project fund for the new Sheriff's Oakhurst Logistics Facility. In addition, we're requesting approval of RUR 22-18 in the amount of $1,415,000 or $1,415,850 for a cash flow loan amount to cover the capital project cash flow shortfall. The total estimated project is about $3.8 million. However, due to the timing of the proposed funding sources and construction schedule, the cash flow loan is necessary to ensure that our contractors are paid timely. The Oakhurst Sheriff's Logistic Facility began groundbreaking last month and is scheduled to be complete in February of 2023. On the slide before you, you can see the progress that has been made in the past few weeks. And in the table before you, you can see the funding plan and repayment schedule show that there will still be additional funds from the original funding plan back in December of 2021 that'll need to be transferred to pay back the cash flow loan. Under the current funding plan, an additional $414,392 will be transferred from the Rural Sheriff's Fund, an additional $822,180 from the Sheriff Patrol impact fees to pay back the cash flow loan. However, due to additional change orders and pending work orders, staff will need to return to your board at a later date with the revised funding plan and to complete the repayment of the cash flow loan. And with that being said, we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
Made it very clear. Thank you.
And then this is up there right in front of the sheriff's office. We've had that property for quite a while. It was actually being saved for the Oakhurst Government Center, but we got lucky and be able to buy that medical center. We got our government center up there, so we got the perfect place for the sheriff to do their rest of their department up there.
Move to approve?
Second?
Any public comment on this? Seeing none? Roll call, please.
Supervisor Rogers?
Yes.
Supervisor Poitras?
Yes.
Supervisor Frazier?
Yes.
Supervisor Gonzalez?
Yes.
And Chairman Wheeler?
Yes.
Vote passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Item, is it 2 minutes early? Is that okay?
Chair, there are no legal notices. However, I would recommend waiting two more minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Is that a bomb? How you doing, buddy?
Okay.
You got some? No.
While we wait, could we do a sound check with Laura Ramos, who's on Zoom from the California Water Institute, please?
One more minute. Is there any pending legislation? I'll move to number 8 while we're waiting.
No, Chairman, you mentioned the one veto that we were going to bring up. You mentioned that one already.
Okay. You guys want to do your supervisor report?
Yeah, that's fine.
Hey, Dave?
And did a town hall last night on Measure T. Very important that Measure T gets passed. We currently have a half-cent sales tax on currently have that half-cent sales tax, and it provides a lot of funding for roads that we wouldn't have otherwise, and it provides for access for considerable planning in advance. It provides us the opportunity to match funds and to get more grant opportunities from the state and the federal government. And there have been many projects completed with that Measure T over the last 30 plus years that it's been on the rolls. I know in District 2 alone, we've had the FLAP project, which was 25 million, that we were able to provide our part of that with Measure T. And that was a huge project all the way out to Eastman Lake. I believe 13 miles or 14 miles, something like that. And then also yearly in MD 21, you have the 60 miles of roads that are in MD 21. We've been matching the small tax increment that they pay for their roads, and been able to accomplish the pavement of 33 miles of that 60 in the last 12 years. So that's quite an accomplishment. Without Measure T, that would have never happened. So Measure T is so important to this community. Every dollar of Measure T goes right here into Madera County. Might also mention that Measure T is paid by everyone who buys something in Madera County. That includes visitors. We have approximately, they said, between 20 and 30% of Measure T comes from outside sources into Madera County. So the tourists and people that visit Madera County are also paying into Measure T when they buy things. It's very important that that passes. Thank you.
Nothing to report.
I had a town hall over at North Fork on the 21st. We had all our staff there, CAL FIRE, everybody else, to help the citizens that lost their 20 homes there in North Fork at the Fort Fire a couple of weeks ago. So it was a great turnout. I want to thank all of our staff for being there. And then that night we had a howl dinner for this lady who lost her husband. Second amount of most money we raised, $7,800, so that was pretty nice. And then I couldn't go to the Clay Dalton Farmer of the Year award dinner, but my chief of staff, Bobby McCauley, went and presented a plaque from the board to Clay, who was well deserved with that. And for that item. And then last night or yesterday, we had our RWMG meeting, and it was kind of neat. We had 25 people there on Zoom, and Ted Don from DWR was thanking our staff and Madera County for being one of the first ones to have their plan in and complete plan. So that was kind of neat to hear that from Sacramento. And tonight, Assemblyman Jim Patterson, not Tom Patterson, but Jim Patterson and I are having a town hall at the Oakhurst Community Center from 6 to 7:30. It's going to be mainly on fire and fire projects. So, Letty.
Nothing to report. Thank you.
Mr. Robb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'd like to report out that last week I joined a delegation of 8 county electeds and transportation directors that range from Kern County up north through San Joaquin County on a lobbying trip to Washington, D.C. We represent we have very common goals and interests in our rural areas. Madera County by ourselves, if we were to travel there, we represent 160,000. But when we have an 8-county coalition, there's about 4.5 to 5 million people we represent, so we have a lot more clout. We met with the various legislators to talk about various projects that they have put forward, and we're waiting over the next month or two to see if those projects get funded. We met with the Department of Interior. We met with the Department of Transportation. And transportation these days is just not meeting with the Department of Transportation. There's all these other things that enter into it, the EPA, et cetera, et cetera. It was really interesting. It tells you a little bit about the state of California. When we met with the Department of Interior, we were talking about water storage and some of the projects here. And they said, well, why don't you talk to our district office in California? And we're like, well, aren't you guys their bosses? But these guys really had no clue and really showed very little interest as far as what's going on in California. So they kicked that can down the road. And it was something somewhat similar to Department of Transportation. They had these transportation dollars that they give to the state. And of course, then the state allocates these dollars through their lens, which is not the same lens that we look through here in the San Joaquin Valley. I'll just leave it at that. So it was a good trip. But one thing that's good news, I know that there's varying opinions in terms of the bipartisan Infrastructure Act, as well as the, what was it called? The Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not quite sure about that. But it passed, and there is money out there. So we were informed many, many times to work to, latch on to some of these sources of money. So we'll be working with staff in order to do that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to get seconds here on this. I failed to mention that the PBS broadcast of Tapped Out came on again, and I've been on that. I'm on at least 3 of the sessions on that. So I got an email from a friend of mine. She posted on Facebook a picture of the TV set with my picture on there while I was doing that. But if you haven't had a chance to watch Tapped Out, be sure and watch that. It really describes the problem and the potential solutions very well. So it has a bunch of different water experts on it, and the research on it was very, very good. And it's done by a local Madera County guy and his wife who were involved in our region up there and lived up there in North Fork, Oakhurst.
Yeah.
And so they do an excellent job. Really appreciate the broadcast.
They did a really good job. On that Measure T, that is so important to be a self-help county. There's only 25 or 28 of us in the state. And we are lucky enough to be able to be in a self-help county with that tax, that major T tax that we've had since 1990. And that we will do projects where a lot of counties don't get to do that. And a couple of years ago, they tried to pass a bill that eliminated the self-help counties. A lot of the counties can't get this passed. And so we get projects that some of the bigger counties can't. That is kind of a safeguard for us smaller counties to be able to get those extra funds to do these extra jobs.
Right. They can't tell us what to do with those funds. That's the key, isn't it?
That's the key to it. So it's very, very important that everybody votes for Measure T.
Absolutely.
If we want to keep our roads up. So thank you. And now it's way past now, 10:30. By law, we can't start a public hearing that's advertised for a time like at 10:30. So we start early, then somebody could complain that anything we done during that meeting, they could cancel it out because we did not start on time. So you can start later, but you can't start before. So here it is, Stephanie, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Stephanie Agneson, your Director of Water and Natural Resources. I'm here with Mike Linden, Deputy County Counsel, as well as Laura Ramos from the California Water Institute. We're going to start with a short presentation on some research that she's led at the California Water Institute on meters. So I will project on my end, and then she'll need to be unmuted on Zoom, please. Were we able to unmute Ms. Ramos? Laura, can you hear us?
Seven A, penalties of the 2023 for exceeding water allocations. Discussion and consideration to adopt a resolution establishing the authority for the imposition of penalties for those who extract groundwater in excess of allocations for the Chowchilla Subbasin, for the Mendota Subbasin, and for the Madera Subbasin.
Let's try one more time. Laura, can you hear us? Otherwise, we're going to move to the second part of the presentation. Okay, Laura, we will come back to you at another meeting because there is some important research on flow meters from the California Water Institute that I would like the board to hear of.
If they get it connected, we could do it here a little bit later too, if we get it connected. So she can hear us, Laura. If you guys can keep working with our staff and yourself to get that done, I'd like to have that. I think it would be nice if everybody here could see and hear that.
Okay. So the outline of today's presentation, I'll give some background information. We'll review the water code. We'll look at what other agencies are doing with penalties and then review the current resolutions. So your board has seen these slides before, but we expected a full house. So I think it's good to review some of the work that has been underway. So these slides were shared during the joint GSP, Groundwater Sustainability Plan, meetings in 2018 and 2019. On the left, the downward trend has dots associated with it. Each of those are groundwater levels. So you can see a declining trend in groundwater. The green part of the line is extended over time and what we project to see in the future if we don't take action. So this is a well selected at random in the Madera subbasin. There are similar trends in the Chowchilla subbasin as well, which is to say if you don't take action, you face steeply declining groundwater levels in the future. So with significant input from an advisory committee, from meetings, public workshops, we have found some solutions for these problems, but they are not easy. What you see in front of you for the Madera subbasin shows how much water on average is extracted, and then that's blue. And on the right, the green bar shows how much water goes back into the ground naturally through infiltration from rivers, canals, and rainfall. So you can see there is a significant gap between what's extracted and what goes back in naturally. People tend to call that overdraft or shortfall. So the first thing that people said was, we have enormous opportunity for recharge in Madera County. There is an east side Chowchilla bypass where there are some really significant flows. So let's go and be very aggressive about recharge. And you'll show that's the green addition on the right is the 60,000 acre feet annually on average. Now, of course, recharge doesn't happen every year. This is not one of those years. Recharge is the sort of thing you need to do in a big gulp where you take as much water as you can at one time because you may not see it again for a couple of years. Now, even being extra aggressive about projects, the green side, there is a certain amount of demand reduction that has to occur, and that's what shows up on average as 105,900. So there are a number of projects that reduce demand, and I'll show that in another slide, but with the projects, what you see is projections of groundwater levels stabilizing. So without projects and management actions, you had a steeply declining line, and with them, you have stabilizing groundwater conditions. Not immediately, but stabilized over time. So now we look at what we are working at, the Madera County GSAs in the 3 subbasins. We have been extra aggressive, as I said, about recharge, both in terms of flood mar or flooding fields, as well as creation of basins when necessary. The most cost-effective way to create a basin by far is for farmers to do it on their own land. We've also looked into other supplies. One of those is Sites Reservoir, but there's the potential for other long-term water transfers as well. We've talked through what reducing demand looks like. It is an allocation with or without a market. It means taking land out of irrigated production. It means looking at multi-benefit land repurposing or perhaps other incentives. And today our focus is really on the allocation and the associated penalty. So now we're shifting to the next part of the presentation where we look at the water code for SGMA related to penalties. I've highlighted the portions that I thought were most relevant. So you can see, and we've looked at this for several years already, that a civil penalty not to exceed $500 per acre foot, that's in excess of what the allocation is one option. There's an option for any fee imposed for extraction, you'll see that characterized later as replacement water, meaning if one person uses an acre foot, the GSA has to go buy that acre foot elsewhere or take land out of production in the equivalent of that. The second section talks through a one-time $1,000 penalty. And then there's this other piece, which is trickier to implement, which is $100 per day after a 30-day notice period. So those are your options within the water code. None of them are particularly easy. So we're going to shift a little bit and talk through what other districts and GSAs are doing. So you have, of course, heard of Westlands of 620,000 approximate acres. They are going the way of flow meters on each well within the district. They are, of course, an agency of resources and an agency that has existed for a long period of time. Their penalty is a civil penalty not to exceed $500 per acre foot. And then they have an exceedance. If you go beyond 25 acre feet over your allocation, you have to reimburse the district for buying more water. So that's that replacement water fee. So that is what one big established district has chosen to do in terms of penalties. And when we reached out to confirm this to Westlands, they just wanted to confirm that the penalties are cumulative. It's not one or the other. You would have to pay both. So now we're going to go further south to the Eastern Tule GSA. This is one of the GSAs that is sort of like a cousin to the Madera County GSA. It has some of the same challenges in terms of significant overdraft. They're at 162,000 acres using Land IQ for monitoring total ET. Growers can opt in for flow meters on the well if they're providing a fair amount of installation and inspection information. And they have penalties divided into these two tiers of $270 and $500. Then moving to Lower Tule River Irrigation District and Pixley Irrigation District, they're managed as a whole. So they're 104,000 acres, 69,500 respectively, also using satellite ET for groundwater consumption. They don't have a provision for using meter data right now. They have two tiers, $90 an acre foot and $180 for tier 2. So I think what you're seeing is there are some significant rates and some significant penalties elsewhere in the valley. Exceeding tier 2 results in the $1,000 per acre foot, and then whatever you overuse, you have to underuse the next year. Looking at Mid-Cahuilla, I have a couple slides on them. They are slightly more complicated. They're 104,000 acres, also using ET measured by satellite. You can use meter data in an appeals process. They have two tiers of water. Tier 1 is 0.83 acre feet, so I assume that's transition water over sustainable yield. 0.83 to 1.67 is charged at $160 per acre foot. And then tier 2 is over 1.67 acre feet per acre, up to 2.5 acre feet per acre, and that's charged at $210. Now, today's discussion is really on penalties, but I noticed in our meeting 2 weeks ago that there was some conflation of fees and penalties, so I think it's good to look at the total. In the Mid-Cahuilla, if you exceed the amount we just talked about, that 2.5 acre feet, you're getting $260 per acre foot. And then if you go over 4.5 acre feet, you're at the $500 level. So slightly more complicated. The way I like to think of it is we're all somewhere on the same island. We're just in different parts of the island. These are places with similar levels of groundwater overdraft who have significant challenges ahead. So in summary, as you know, the allocations were part of our board adopted plans. They were also part of separate resolutions that were adopted by the board. In order to have people follow the allocation, we need some sort of penalty that ensures that they stay within the allocation. think we've said this before, but we might as well say it again. We do not want the money from penalties. There is no source for that to be used other than Sigma-related activities, but we do need a disincentive for people going over their allocation. Our rates currently are within the bounds for agencies with the same amount of critical work. Penalties should also be within those bounds. And last time we talked through sending mock penalty bills in January of this year, so people had a sense of what it would be should the board adopt a penalty. So there's 3 resolutions before you. They're all beginning in 2023. Based on the feedback at the last meeting, we created a pre-approval process if you wanted to use meters as an alternative to satellite measurement. We do require that they are that the flow meters are installed correctly, that they're maintained, and that they're certified in the field, or if someone wants to send them off to a calibration facility, they can do that as well. The resolutions before you begin at $100 per acre foot over the allocation for a farm unit. In Chowchilla, there is an additional $1,000 per farm unit one-time penalty. The penalties, as they are outlined in the resolutions, increase $100 per acre foot per year. So the first year they're $100, second year they're $200, and so on. They can't go above $500. We decreased the interest rate for the penalties from 10% to 6%. And we also made a shorter appeals process. So if you wanted to appeal your ETAW, we have an independent consultant review it. And if you wanted to appeal that, you could go to the board. This has removed an intermediate step. So that concludes my presentation. We may want to check with Ms. Ramos and see if her audio works. And then I could take your questions.
Can I ask a clarifying question on the presentation?
Yeah.
Stephanie?
Well, Davis first and then you.
Let Letty go ahead.
Just quick, on page 12, when you're talking about the Lower Tool River, the last point says that there's a $1,000 penalty, but can you explain that? Because if the water code says it's up to $500, how did they get to 1,000?
I suspect it's a replacement water charge, which uses a separate process.
Okay, thank you.
That makes sense. I was wondering the same thing. Dave?
So that's built into the GSP with Chowchilla Water District? Or I mean.
This was Tule River.
The allocations.
The $1,000.
Oh.
Why would we add $1,000 to?
Why is Chowchilla treated differently in
Yeah,
the resolution?
That's what I want to know.
Yes, there is no funding source right now, and there is a significant domestic well mitigation program that this could fund. That's why it's treated differently.
And we're working right now with a group on an MOU to take care of that.
Yes.
So with them depositing money in escrow for that purpose, why would we continue to charge $1,000 acre foot or $1,000 fee?
Your board could certainly change that or waive that, but money has not been deposited in an escrow account to my knowledge to date.
Okay,
This is
not
to
today,
protect
but we did
us.
receive a letter that stated that they were going to do that. I take them in good faith that they're going to.
Until the money is in the account, I think you may want to consider a stronger penalty in Chowchilla.
Well, if the board went that direction, then I would suggest that once the MOU is finalized and the funds are deposited, that goes away.
Certainly language to that effect could be added. How are we coming with Ms. Ramos on Zoom?
I have.
Laura, can you hear us?
I wasn't quite finished with my comments.
Go ahead.
Okay. We just asked the question, how did we get here? Well, many years ago, we started down this road with the state of California using the Endangered Species Act to reduce to reduce surface water deliveries to our farmers in the farm areas of this part of the state and other parts of the state. The agreement with environmental groups concerning the San Joaquin River certainly curtailed our ability to use water that we've traditionally used in the past. That happened back 2016, I believe, 2016 approximately. That agreement was made, and the environmental allocation of that water is 50%. So 50% of the San Joaquin River water goes down the river out to the ocean or wherever it goes. And the remaining part, the allocation is 40% goes to farming and 10% to other uses. So that brings us to the point of groundwater. Many people arrived here farming on the premise of the surface water delivery. Been doing that for years. And it's really unfair of the state to have changed the rules in the middle of the game, but that happened. And I don't believe there's a whole lot that we can do about it without changing the entire political system in the state of California, which I'd love to see happen, by the way. And I'd love to see the Endangered Species Act go away because it is more problems than good. And I believe it hurts the environment rather than helping it. Certainly hurting people more than helping people, that's for sure. Apparently we're not part of the equation when it comes to species, and I think farmers are probably the most endangered species of all. We cannot continue.
Please hold your clap until it's done, okay?
With that, we've also had 40,000 acres of rangeland that was converted to permanent crops in the last 10 years or less. And with all that being said, we cannot continue to pump without constraint. We can't continue to operate on the premise that an entity can pump whatever they want and however much they want without limit, and that's just not acceptable. We all have to live within a limit. And because there are so many straws in the ground, and each straw is taking out a portion, and it's fair to allocate that portion until we can change the situation in Sacramento. And I hope that can happen. We've got to survive until then. In my own personal situation, I know that our wells, we have 2 wells on our properties, and in the last 10 years, 1 well, I had to replace it because the groundwater levels were dropping rapidly, and I think we lost 50-some feet in the last 10 years. And significant cost to those replacements, $70,000 for the 1 well, and that's a lot of money for a domestic well. That's a lot of money. And anybody would say that's a lot of money. That all being said, we know that we have to limit ourselves. We're going to have to work together to make this work, or none of us are going to survive at that rate. To move with haste will lay this land waste. I'm not Jesse Jackson, but that just popped into my head. To move with haste will lay this land waste. And we're going to lose 30% of 80% of our economy. 80% of our economy is agriculture. We'll lose 30% of that. Along with that, 1/3 of the jobs. And you can consider corresponding jobs service industry jobs and ancillary jobs that are related to agriculture. There's bottling plants, there's packing plants, there's packing houses, there are processing plants. We're going to lose jobs related to that, to agriculture through that. So 30% of 80% of our economy, third of our jobs. And I might add that many of those jobs are held by minority people. This is affecting both sides. The entrepreneurs, there are minorities who are entrepreneurs who are being affected. There are minorities who are not entrepreneurs who work for those entrepreneurs that are being affected. We're all being affected, no matter what socioeconomic level you are in. We're all being affected. We're going down together or up together, one or the other. Family farms will be fallowed, and pardon the alliteration, many of which are minority owned, as I pointed out. I'd like to just say that we need to glide to the solution, not dive to the solution. And that was the whole idea, moving to 2040 is to glide path downward so that we're not pumping what we're pumping now, a glide path, not a dive path. And I realize that we're a little bit behind schedule. But if we dive, there's an abrupt stop at the end of that dive, and we're not going to like the stop, because the abrupt stop means we arrive sooner to a problem than we wanted to, and that's an economic problem. An economic dive is unacceptable in the glide path. Got to have a balance to both. And I'm wrapping up here.
Okay.
But 2040 is supposed to be the date to arrive. I will not be the guy who votes to put people out of business. I represent businesses and people and friends out here. I believe there's a balance. I believe there's a balance that we can reach. We've got, that's why we have this discussion. That's why we have this debate, is to try and reach a balance, not one-sided, not a crash dive approach, but a balanced approach. And as I've stated before, I know many people are concerned about the fee, and I'm just going to make this quick statement. The fee must be reduced, especially in light of the current economic circumstances. Commodity prices are low, inflation is high, and I understand that staff is considering that, so I want you to keep that in mind. They're considering that reduction, and that is really an important thing for us to survive. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to, before we open up for public comment and testimony, I'd just kind of like to bring, again, some perspective to this item, and some of that was already discussed. Back in 2014, we know the State Groundwater Management Act was passed by the governor and the legislature. And what it was all about, we were in the middle of a drought, and we were looking at all over the state of California, there were groundwater basins that were severely impacted. Not only here, Southern Valley, Northern Valley, and even over in Paso Robles with the expansion of agriculture there. And there's really the only source of water is underground. So even that area has to come up with a plan in order to sustain the aquifer. A lot of times we hear the word sustain, and frankly, I don't even know what that means. I think it's a buzzword that's thrown out there. But when we talk about sustaining our aquifer, to me, it's clear what that means. It means to keep it at a level that is reasonable and allows us to not pump out more than we put in. For many, many years, we were there, but starting in looking at the chart that, and I've got a copy of it here that was provided by Stephanie, it looks like in the year 2000, we saw a abrupt drop. So we've had a drop in our water table on this sample well of about 200 feet in the last 20 years. And what we're looking to do is to keep that from going down, because we know that that is not sustainable, and none of us in this room will have jobs, will have businesses, because number one, we're going to run out of water the way it looks. And second of all, the water quality as we go down deeper gets worse and worse and worse. And everybody in this room that is in agriculture knows what I'm talking about. To use a bank illustration, there's something called an overdraft in banking. And that's where you don't keep enough money in your account based on the checks that you write. If you deposit $1,000 and write a check for $1,200 and that's all you've got in that $1,000, you're going to overdraw your account. And you may have a friendly banker that says, hey, I'm going to carry that overdraft. And then you put $1,000 in and you write another check for $1,200, and then you are $400 overdrawn it. But eventually, the banker is going to lose patience, and the banker is going to cut you off. And that's the same illustration as with our aquifer. We can overdraft the aquifer, and we can continue just willy-nilly pumping away. But the problem is our aquifer is going to say at some point that's enough. We're either going to deplete our aquifer, or the water quality is going to be so bad again that very, very few people. There might be some people around the fringes of the district where maybe they get some recharge from the San Joaquin River or something, but for the most part, that's going to be it. We're done. And so that's what we're looking at here. And again, in your hearts, you know that that's what the situation is. And that's what we're doing. We're looking to save the basin. We're looking to save agriculture. And we're looking at saving it, and so it can operate at a sustainable level. So with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Yeah, they're still working on the deal for Laura. I just wanted to make a couple.
Chairman, I believe we're ready with Laura.
Oh, we are?
Good morning. This is Laura.
Morning. Good morning.
Thank you,
Oh,
Laura.
you can hear me. Yay, thank you.
You are all queued up and everyone can see your slides, and we introduced you already. So I think we're good to go. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. So as Stephanie said earlier, the California Water Institute at Fresno State did a research and a testing and certification of some meters. And so we did the test for Cahuilla Subbasin GSAs, and it was to evaluate the functionality of meter system, which included the measurement, the collecting, and aggregating of pumps discharge from groundwater wells. The testing and evaluation of it included the system as a whole, which, as I said earlier, included the water meters, the telemetry units, and the cloud data platforms. We started first with a questionnaire and gathering data, then did a literature search, and then finally completed with the testing in the laboratory at the Center for Irrigation Technology at Fresno State of each of the meters, the telemetry units, as well as the cloud platforms. We tested whether the water passing through the meter was accurate. We tested whether the electronics that converted that data into measurements was accurate. Did it communicate with a cloud-based information accurately? Did it aggregate the data accurately? And was the user interface easy for anyone to read the information provided by the interface? As I said earlier, we tested all of the three, and we learned that you can purchase a meter alone and then attach a telemetry unit and attach a cloud-based, or there's other companies that do one or another. So it can be a combination of multiple parties. What we learned through the software or through the testing was that when you install the meters at the manufacturer's recommended installations, the majority of them tested, the 10 that were tested, all tested within 5% plus minus, which is the average for the industry and is acceptable, that there might be a 5% discrepancy between them. But what we found out the most was that there's the biggest difference if these meters in the system is not installed correctly. We know that there are many velocities and that there are many ways in which a meter can be installed incorrectly. But for purposes of this test, we checked 5 specific ways that we found that are the most commonly ways that they are installed incorrectly in the field. So for the first ones, as I mentioned earlier, we tested 10 meters and the metering system, and the top 5 that tested the most accurate were the ones that were used to test for the non-standard installation. As you can see here, 0 meaning there was no error, and then the app or acceptable by the industry is about 5%. These meters were tested against a certified calibrated meter that is set in the lab and then compared to those. As you can see, they all function differently. The 5 meters are here. And so if you see here, if the calibrated meter tested at 0%, the tested meter that was installed incorrectly tested at a difference of about 13% on the high end. Wow. So we grabbed the high end, the low end, and the average of all of those tests. And so we found that if you install it with the pump upstream at about 5 feet per second, you're going to get a discrepancy of anywhere between 11 and 13%, which means that the meter will tell you about 13% more than what is actually passing through the meter. We also tested them at different velocities. As you see here, there's the different velocities and different, each of the different non-standard configurations, and they all performed inaccurately. Also, what we did find was that the faster the water is moving, the bigger the chances of the meter measuring inaccurately. So as you can see, if the meter is, if the water's flowing at about 2 FPSs, then it stays lower, as you see in this one, and then as you go, it gets higher and higher. So the faster the water's moving, the bigger the chances of the inaccuracy. And so if you can see here, we tested the different velocities and the different types of non-standard installations and the difference that it made. As I mentioned earlier, the 0% is matching of the certified calibrated meter. If it is under, is because it measured lower, but as you see in the majority of them is measuring higher. So you're measuring that more water is moving when it is not installed correctly. We also tested them at 8 FPS, and this was just giving you a summary. The other one we did by this graph is more by each of the items. This one is specifically giving us the high, the low, and the average. But as you can see, the majority had a big variance in between them when the water moved at different speeds and were constantly giving a different reading. So the conclusion of the test and the recommendations are that the majority of the meters measure within the 5% acceptable if they're installed correctly. Once they're not installed correctly, then the chances for the errors of them dramatically increases, as well as there's just different platforms, different telemetry units, and different meters, and you can purchase a meter on its own, or you can attach a telemetry unit, or you can have a different cloud-based. So as I mentioned earlier, we tested the entire system, so here I presented some specific information on the physical meters. Thank you. And I'm glad you were able to hear me.
Any questions?
Thank you, Laura.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Did you find any circumstances in which the meters measured inaccurately less water than what was actually being pumped through?
Yes, let me share my screen again. There was not an overall, but in if you see this one, I'm not sure if it's big enough, but the bottom left one, if the check valve is downstream, there were times that a few of them, so the 0 meaning it measured the same as the calibrated certified meter,
Right.
and if it's lower, it means it measured lower than what was measured. But as you can see from all of the other graphs, most of the time it is at more than. And when it did measure less than, it was when the water was going very slow at 2 FPSs, and then as it went faster, then it was higher. So the majority did have a slightly measuring under if in the 2, but then the majority happened in the faster. So yes, they did. And this graph shows, but in average, if you average out all of the tests, the ones that created negative and positive, the majority still averaged out to a higher number.
So in your opinion, incorrectly installed meters would only work in our favor as far as a loss of water?
That I think that they tested some very specific meters, and there's other circumstances where meters slow over time, especially those with moving parts.
Okay, so it'd be interesting to see the data on that, on how many other meters and you know, how many are there? Do we know?
I do not know how many meters exist, but what we'd like the takeaway to be is that meters are an acceptable pathway forward with correct installation. And if they're not installed correctly, you're not going to get a correct reading. It could be high or it could be low. Either way, it's still not correct. So the installation is critical for accuracy.
Okay, Dave?
Yeah, that makes my point too on the satellite data. I mean, if we're going to say that they're not correctly installed so that the data isn't correct, so we can't move forward with that, we cannot move forward with incorrect data from a satellite either. So that's a valid point.
And the resolutions in front of you today for your consideration have 2 pathways, including a meter pathway.
Right, and I like to say that I appreciate your work on that because it's changed considerably from what it was.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Something I also wanted to mention was many of you here today know that we received a letter last week from the state of California regarding our GSP, and they found that there were some issues with the GSP, and they did not approve it. They've given us 180 days for the basin to correct some of these things. Now, these are in common with 6 other GSAs. We've got City of Madera, we've got the Madera Water District, we have Newstone, we have Gravelly Ford, we have MID and Root Creek, including ourselves. And so this is in regards to the entire basin. And they say that our plan number 1 ignored damage caused by subsidence. That would be pumps, roads, canals, things of that sort. So that's something that we're going to have to correct in our plan to get back to the state. Second of all, they're saying that the GSAs did not coordinate goals, definitions, et cetera. We didn't work together, each GSA, to come up with a plan that would, again, be in concert with each other. So that's going to have to be worked on. That should be fun. The third thing is, the minimum thresholds as far as our aquifer, they're saying they're too high, and we set our minimum thresholds below historic lows. So, and what that does is it, again, we're probably not limiting what we should, but we'll be working on that. And then also, the State Water Board mentioned that 184 domestic wells have gone dry, and that's higher than what the projections were in the GSP. And then they went on to project if we don't do what we've talked about doing as far as a group, rough over 800 domestic wells could go dry. And that's a big part of SGMA. There might be some of you, many of you who are like, well, who cares about domestic wells? But, you know, they are homes, people live there. They, and if it doesn't matter what we think, it's kind of like it's what the state thinks. And again, they're homes and they're things that we need to consider in their families. So just wanted to mention that we did receive the report. We have until March of 2023 to respond. Thank you.
Thank you. Brett, sorry.
Thank you very much. So as we're going into this public comment portion of it, and thank you, Stephanie, for these presentations. And again, thank you. Sorry to always continue to ask for new things from the dais, but as we get receive the public input process, you know, I think that makes us better. And so thank you for this on the flow meters. We didn't pay for this study from Fresno State. This was this was done without any coordination with us. It was just already there. So thank you for finding that. You know, when the state passed SGMA and put it into law, and you know, they can hide in Sacramento in the ivory tower and not have to see what the impacts are on the ground. And we do, right? They passed it to us for this impossible task of implementing and managing this basin. While they hide from the public, you know, we're here where the rubber meets the road, and I don't see that as a negative. I see that as a positive, right? Is hearing from you and knowing no one knows the ground and water better than farmers and ag workers and those of you that are in the ag economy. You know, I've lost more sleep over this than anything else I've ever done up here. Every time I make a vote, I think of what it would do to my brother who farms 80 acres up in Stanislaus, what it would do to my grandma who farmed 120 acres up in Manteca. And I think of them. Those are the people that I think of when I think of what is this going to do to people. But like I said, I think it's our strength that we're here. We're not able to hide from any of you when we're making these decisions. These are and I can tell you from not just my standpoint, but everyone that's been on this board with me, that everything that we've done looking at this has been, how do we protect ag with this? How do we ensure that there is an adequate water supply so that the next generation can take over the farms? That has never escaped a single person on this board. I know it has not me, but I've seen it on the faces of my fellow board members of how important and how serious they take it, and we take it as well as staff. These are our solutions and what we've come up with little to no guidance from the state. They only tell us what we haven't done right, but they've never told us what the right path is. And thank God for that, right? Because they don't know what the right path is. And they've just pushed it down to the local level, which I think is where it should stay, where we can grow with each other, figure out what's working, what's not, move, change. We have the ability to do that here. And I think you've seen it, you know, as we're moving. Right now, we're just kind of at the start of it, but there is motion. There are moving pieces that we can look to in how to bring down the fee, how to manage it, if sites isn't viable, we can shift from that. We can be nimble at the local level, much more so than the state. And so as you're preparing your your comments and public comments. I would welcome and appreciate any solutions that you have. We know the problems and what this is doing. And like I said, I lose sleep over it. And I'd like to hear what do you think we can do better? What are the things that we can do better? And it can't just be do nothing, start over again, and
Right.
throw it all out, baby with the bathwater. So again, and I will still sit up here and take any negative comment because that's the position that we're in. But I would appreciate solutions or things that we can do and how we can get better. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you for being here, engaged in this. We are fully in it with you, trying to get to the best outcome, which is a healthy, vibrant ag economy in Madera County.
Yeah, thank you, Brett. My turn. I've been on here since 2007, and back then the Costco Resource Conservation District, which I happened to be the chairman of it at the time, we wrote up a grant to test wells in the foothills. They had a water committee, which I was also on, appointed by the Board of Supervisors down here. And they done a grant to test wells down here. So anyway, the county came to us, the Costco Resource Conservation District, asked us to join up on that 2 grants, and we did. And that's when I got educated, I'm going to say, because that after that study was done, I think they did over 500 wells, most of them down here, and we studied it for 2 years. That 90 to 95% of all the water, this is all just for groundwater, nothing top water or nothing, dams or anything else, just this groundwater pumping, that 90 to 95% of all the water being pumped out was by farms. And at that time is just when they first started, I'm not going to say farmers, I'm going to say people started buying our rangeland, our rangeland and drainage that they did a lot on Highway 41 around the ranchos. I was a kid, we're going to City College, when we drive down here in the morning early, be really thousands of geese out there eating the grain that after they had picked it and everything. And then they started, big corporations started buying that kind of ground. And then when drip irrigation started, and like Dave said, the last count we got, I haven't been able to get a good count in the last few years, was over 40,000 acres of rangeland converted over to pistachios and almonds. And that's when the subsidence, wells dropping, this graph here with the well that Stephanie had, where it shows what it's dropped. And that was just about the time that Max Rodriguez, who Letty replaced, and we had a couple of public hearings, what we should do about that kind of pumping. And so I know everybody hates the word moratorium, but even myself, because I got a moratorium stopped in Oakhurst that they had in there 4 or 5 years, so they couldn't do no building there. And but what the moratorium was is to stop any new farm wells on grazing land that was converted over to almonds and pistachios. And yesterday at our RWMG meeting, like I said, there was about 25 people, and I've got all the water companies, the list, and everything else right here that was there. You guys want to see it? And one of the reports we had was from the Chowchilla. They got a grant to test domestic wells there, and they've been testing them for mainly nitrates. Most of them are really high in nitrates, but the thing that they're finding now, not only nitrates, they're finding lead in them. The reason they're finding lead now is because the water table has dropped so far now that they're getting into old water that has the lead and other stuff in it, nitrates, and not nitrates so much, but uranium and stuff. But they were shocked when they started finding out all this lead in there. So what Rob was saying about how we got to keep sustaining this, and what Brett said, it's not only the farmers, We're talking about all you other people here that are service people that works on these farms, or in a store, or in a feed store, a pump store, or whatever. They got to have a place to live. There's no water for them, no worse than there's no water for the farmer. We run out of water, all your expensive, nice properties worth nothing. No water, just dry desert. So if we don't control this some way, and I think that's the reason the state took this big step to do the Sigma and all this, but if we don't do this, like Brett says, we're all going to suffer. We've got to have a place to live. We've got to have a place to grow food for us to eat. But we got to stop the overdraft the water. No, not even no question about it. And I know you guys, I've seen a sign out here saying we're parasites in the position of power. You guys really think that? So if any of you were up here, would you not have to make that decision? It's a tough decision. Brett says, the first thing he told me when I seen him this morning, he said that, I haven't been able to sleep at all this last couple of weeks because of this decisions we've got to make here. Tough decisions, but if we don't do it, just remember who will come in and do it for you. State will. We'll be a little more compassionate compared to what the state would do. One farm that I really want to talk about is going out 145. They were in the McKinney Ranch out on the curve there. I just remember when I was coming down the first few years after elected, they always had cattle on it every year. And all of a sudden, they had a big well drilling. They drilled for probably, seemed like 2 or 3, 4, 5 weeks. And a neighbor just told me that they got 2 pumps, and one of them is like 250 horsepower, and the other one is 300 horsepower, pumping water 24/7 on that. It's about a section of land there. When they first started pumping, I probably got at least 5 or 6 calls just from Madera Acres or whatever they call that. Their wells went dry. They hadn't even planted yet. They were just testing the water. So you take that all over our basin here, and add that up, and you see why. That chart shows how much we're overdrafting. This is not an easy decision, and we're going to have to make that decision, and we all got to live with it. So, thank you. Anything else, Stephanie?
No, sir.
Okay, now we're going to open it up to the public comment. I'm going to take first a couple-minute break because I got to go to the bathroom again. Get my agenda here. Got to do that first. You're welcome.
So Matt.
Whoopee, 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 sit down, please, and let's stop the conversation.
All right, the mics weren't on. Everybody, let's take a seat.
Come on.
The mics weren't on.
It is?
It wasn't.
Oh.
When you first.
Oh, okay, now it's short. Yeah. Okay, we're going to start this. I want everybody to be respectful, please. We can still hold the applause to afterwards. Also, we're going to break at 12:30 for lunch, and please turn your cell phones off. Last time, I think I asked 5 times, and 5 times the phones rang out there. So we just keep this going smoothly, and then we will finish at 1:30. We'll break at 12:30, and then we'll start again at 1:30.
Can I say it in Spanish, Tom?
Huh?
Can I say this in Spanish for you?
You want to?
Sí,
Oh,
sí,
yeah,
por
please.
favor, pueden silenciar sus teléfonos celulares y a las 12:30 vamos a tomar un momento para comer. So, a las 12:30. Pero si pueden silenciar sus teléfonos, por favor.
You turn phones too?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Letty's great. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, you're first.
County Council, Jay Varney, and the Honorable Board of Supervisors. My name is Mark Reed, candidate for Madera County Supervisor, 5th District. My family are farmers and cattle ranchers going back to Virginia, Kentucky, and throughout California. I was born free, so I'm homegrown American and raised conservative. I am here to request that a no vote be cast against the proposed fees and fines by the GSAs and Sigma. I would like to take a slightly different approach than what you're going to hear to the issues at hand by pointing out the difference between a county employee and elected supervisors. The county employees are simply doing the work of the county government, an important job for every department representing the county of Madera. However, our elected officials are not employees, but representatives of the people who elected them. You're not employees of the county, nor are you employees of the state. You have an obligation to represent the interests of the very individuals who elected you. If you vote yes to these fees and fines, you're allowing a theft to take place. If you vote yes, you are caving into the state mandates that are perpetrating this theft of property rights. If you vote yes, you are voting to strip the water rights that are property rights, a property not owned by the state or by the county, but by the very individuals you represent. If you vote yes, you're voting to allow the theft of water, a tangible asset that belongs to the landowners. You're allowing the theft of their very livelihoods from past generations to future generations. You're allowing the theft of their property values. You're allowing a theft that made this country great, and that is the theft of the free marketplace, bringing food to American citizens across this great nation. If you vote yes, you are not only allowing a theft of a quantifiable property value, but you are voting to strip the very dignity of the true backbone of our nation and the great county of Madera. It is time for you to stand up for those who elected you and stand down and allow someone else to do the job. I'm not only asking you to vote no on these proposed fees and fines, but for you to direct County Council to fight for the interests of those who elected you. Fight for the families that made this county great, the farmers, the cattlemen, the ranchers, and the dairymen. Fight for the very heart of Madera County. I stand before you with the full endorsement of the Valley Groundwater Sustainability Coalition that represents all of the farmers in this room and ranchers. Vote no to these proposed fees and fines and direct County Council to fight for us. Thank you.
Thank you. That was 3 minutes. Just remember, each speaker gets 3 minutes, and we will cut you off because we got so many speakers, so please respect that. Thank you,
Hi,
buddy. How
I'm
are you?
Dan Stoops, and I'm from North Fork. Have any of you worked harvesting crops? Okay.
I have.
Good.
Yes, I have.
But you understand, I worked in 107-degree weather, working with some people. Only 3 days picking nectarines. I gained great respect for the hardworking people that did that. Farming is not easy. It's not. They are focused on using the land God gave them for good and employing other farmers, others. Farmers are the real job creators, not government. Hardworking farmers make jobs and give hope at the end of a hard day. I wish that you would listen to more of the farmers for the best solution for the problems. My sister lives in Pixley, California, has 8 acres of almonds that she had to take out because no water. She could not get the water because of a dismal crop. More regulations on farmers will dry up jobs and hardworking farmers and drive them out of business one by one. We have a problem with water management, not the drought. Do the elite in Sacramento and Los Angeles and San Francisco, do they know better than we do? I think not. Why not planning toward dam storage, like Temperance Flat Dam? Even the city folks could take advantage of some clean energy that it could produce. According to the United Nations, 135 million people in the world have food scarcity. They worry about it from day to day. In this year, 2022, it doubled. 276 million people are starving. Our world is starving. Our refugees can't work. What are they going to do? Afghanistan, Ukraine, Nigeria, and others, refugee camps, they're starved. We need to do something. People in Madera County need freedom and hope and fewer taxes, not government more rules and regulations. God resists the proud and gives grace to the humble.
My name is John Pero. I'm from Milwaukee, California. My comments are going to be short. One of the things I see, and Dave, I appreciate what you said, and Robert Purchase, I appreciate what you said, but there are some key things in what you said. And what I see is ourselves working around the fringes here. We are scrambling to try to meet a state mandate. We are scrambling to try to meet these regulations that have been put in place by an oligarchy up in Sacramento. Okay, so you asked for solutions, Brent. I'll tell you what one of the solutions is. We have a state that has no problem breaking the law when it comes to the people coming across the southern border. We're a sanctuary state. There are counties around here that become sanctuary counties, breaking the law so that they can then be a sanctuary county. Well, I have a solution. We need to become a water sanctuary county. And we need to start our water storage regardless of what the state says. Okay? We need to take that service water regardless of what the state says. If they can break the laws, we can break the laws. We can be a Second Amendment sanctuary county. We can be a water sanctuary county. And I'm sick and tired of the environmental movement that's been hijacked by the Nazis that has taken over this whole issue to where they don't want people. They don't want farmers. We're part of the problem. Okay? So we need to start taking our ground back. No pun intended here. But that's the solution. We've got to stand up to Sacramento. We've got to, and the groups that have been the most, whether it's the trash issues, whether it's been the lack of management in our forest, that the environmental movement has been hijacked where we can't even thin our forest, which hurts our environment, which hurts wildlife, which hurts the water table, all of that. It's because of the environmental movement. When are we going to hold these people responsible? That's what we need to do. We need to go after these groups because they're the ones that created these problems under the guise of helping the planet. So there's one of your solutions, in my opinion.
My name is Stuart Weil. I farm 48 acres of citrus on Avenue 9. And when I was approached a little over 2 years ago by Stephanie and other staff members, we have a problem. I realized we do have a problem. And as a farmer, I know other farmers, and I figured, you know what, we'll all get through it. We'll do what we have to do. We'll find solutions, and we'll make it through this crisis. And it took about 6 months of dealing with staff, county staff on this thing, and I realized that, wait a minute, we're really not looking for a solution because we only have half of the farmland, which is there to take care of the solution. Okay, the other half has nothing to do with it. So, and that is people in the district are not treated as people in the white area. I'll bet there's nobody here from the district. All these people, all these farmers here are white farmers like me. I know, the only one. So
A
Okay,
bunch of
great.
them.
We have a few. So most farmers here are white area farmers. We are forced to bear the complete burden, 100% of this depleted reservoir under our ground. Okay? The people in the district don't. People in districts do not have an allocation for water. None of them. Okay? Only we do. When I talked to staff about that, they told me, well, we don't have any jurisdiction over them, so there's nothing we can do. Well, you're never going to be able to find a solution to this problem if only half of the people or half of the farmland is being restricted, when the other half has no restrictions whatsoever. And that has to change. And again, what you've done, I mean, what's happened is, in essence, is you've been able to pit farmer against farmer. I've talked to people in the district. Many of them say they don't even use district water because it's cheaper to pump groundwater. Now, what's going on with that? I've noticed as I drive down the county, different roads in Madera County, I've been able to tell who is part of the district and who's not. You can tell by how they water, by how they irrigate. If there's excess water running down, you definitely know those are people in the district. When you see there are trees being pulled out or trees being ground up, used for pulp, you know those are people in the white area. There's a huge difference. The new plantings in Madera are all in district areas. Somebody told me that in the past 2 years, 95% of all new ag wells are going in district areas because they have zero restraint on how much they can pump. So you're trying to fix the problem of a huge underground basin of water, and you're only taking half of the irrigated lands out. The other half you're not doing anything with. And as you said just before, that the state is asking for questions about how we've got to incorporate everybody. Well, that's how it should have started in the very beginning. Not to choose one group of farmers against another. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Madeline Harris from Leadership Council. I wanted to actually comment around the 180-day correction period now that DWR has issued the incomplete decision. And I just wanted to say we'd be happy to help facilitate community engagement opportunities with folks who rely on domestic wells and small water systems to discuss how we can improve the plan as DWR requested to better protect drinking water sources from groundwater levels decline. And consult with impacted communities about how best to protect the future of jobs and drinking water in Madera County. The DWR decision makes it clear that we need to pass sustainable management criteria that better protect groundwater levels, and to Chairman Wheeler's point, groundwater quality, since the deeper we pump, the more naturally occurring contaminants will enter the water supply. And to Supervisor Frazier's point, if we want to keep these decisions local, these are the types of improvements that we need to see to the plan. And, you know, I just want to say there are people in Madera County right now who don't have running water in their homes because there are, you know, gaps with what resources are available to folks. And there are lots of domestic wells, as we all know, going dry, and not everybody can afford to replace them. So I just want to remind all of you that these decisions are having, you know, real life impacts on people with regards to drinking water in their homes as well. And so, again, I just want to reiterate, the reason for my comments is I'm hoping that we can work together wherever possible to improve the groundwater levels and groundwater quality sustainable management criteria as DWR has requested. Thank you.
Morning.
Good afternoon, everybody. Kevin Herman, Specialty Crop Company. I'm here to thank you guys and Stephanie and staff for listening to us at the previous session. You guys have tweaked some of the penalties and fines, and I'm still not happy with it, but it's a compromise, and from where I sit, it seems reasonable. And I thank you guys for listening to us. I do. But the main reason I'm here is to talk about something that's not on the agenda today, and it needs to be on the agenda in the next month or two, and that is what the fees are going to be and having a budget. Farming's tough right now. We all know that. And charging us $246 an acre doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it's $22 million just for Madera, not even counting Chowchilla. $22 million. For me, $700,000 a year. It's a lot of money. And I'm one of the guys that Tom talked about that planted part of the ranchos. I'm part of the problem, but I'm here to be the part of the solution, Tom. And I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is. But please, 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 and this is the point of my message, don't go collecting money you don't need or have a use for. If you only need $5 million next year, assess us $5 million. Don't assess us $22 million. So agriculture, I think I can speak for all of us. We want to be part of the solution to fixing this. But once again, please only assess us what you need. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Good morning. Mike Alamari, local businessman. I think Mark Twain said it best when he said whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting, and that's what we're here for today. I just want to do a quick experiment. So everyone in the room, whoever has a mortgage or a land payment associated with your farm or house, can you raise your hand, including the board? So si usted tiene una casa, si tiene un préstamo con su casa, puedo subir la mano, por favor. So you see that? That's what makes the American economy what it is the fact that we can do an IOU, and we do have the respect for each other that if a bank loans us money or if someone loans us money, we're going to pay it back over time, whether it's a 15-year deal or a 30-year deal. And studying this rate study, and again, a lot of work, I applaud Stephanie for all the work she did, and I emailed her saying so as well. With all these fees, not even including the penalties, you're going to collect all the funds for all the projects in 5 years. And some of those projects don't even take into effect until 2029. So I find it kind of amusing, the fact that Raftellus could even put that in their study, saying that they would collect all the funds before any benefits received. How can people afford that? That's not how things work. So again, I'm not even a farmer, but we want to be part of the solution too. We just don't want to be one-sided and go against these things. And then I think I'm the type of guy that reads signs, from God and from the man above. And I think the way it worked today and why we're here is DWR kicked this back. So we have 6 months on the table. I really think we need to delay the penalties, delay the fees, delay the property tax payments or fees that were supposed to go out. And I think we really need together, and we reached out to Stephanie and says, hey, we're willing to hold a seminar to make sure everyone gets involved in this, because I think we will find a common ground solution, the way we do find it. But the way it was conducted, even me not being a farmer, I find it problematic, such as the way the Prop 218 was conducted. If I own 1 acre, as opposed to some of these guys that own 2,000 acres, we had the same voting power on what our penalty is going to be. So I really think it should have been, if you have 1,000 acres, you have 1,000 voting shares. And if you have 1 acre, you have 1 voting share, because once you do the penalties, or once you do the fees, not the penalties, it's going to be that proportionate as well. So whenever you guys use water at your houses, I'm pretty sure it goes off what you use, not just the fact that you have 1 single APN number. And again, I really think there's solutions here. I've researched the GSP very, very thoroughly, and other GSPs, just because we work in multiple counties and have farm workers everywhere. We could bring up a number of things, sites not utilizing the bypass correctly. But just the final point, because I know my time's running out, is, and I get this from some of the members of the community and some people and federal and state, is, we're okay with expanding cities, whether that's Tesoro Viejo or Riverstone, that's water that's going to be used there too. But as soon as it comes to expanding farming, there's just this notion that it's just a no, and I can't find the reason why that is. Why are we always against expanding farming, especially if we're in a valley that can only do what we do in the world? So thank you.
Morning.
Good morning. My name is Michael Titus. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Wild, Carter, Tipton, and Fresno. As I'm sure the board and county council are aware, we filed an invalidation action in Madera County Superior Court on the rates that were imposed earlier this summer. We've alleged what we believe are violations under Proposition 218, Proposition 26, and the Public Records Act. Now, I know we're here today to talk about the penalties that are going to be imposed on landowners, but I'm sure a lot of landowners either looked up or recently received their fall property tax bill showing the fees which we believe are unconstitutional. And that is what we are challenging in Madera County Superior Court. Now, I want to ask the board today, how much more governmental overreach can these people sustain? Commodity prices are low, diesel prices are through the roof, as well as other harvest costs. And this is not sustainable. I've talked to dozens of family farmed operations, and what the board could do today will sink them. And I know Stephanie brought up earlier other GSAs and the penalties that they are imposing. One thing she did not bring up is how many of these other GSAs just imposed a $246 per acre fee within a 3 to 4 month period. So also she mentioned that there's going to be a $1,000 fee just in the Chowchilla subbasin. And earlier this summer, the landowners and tenants of landowners in Chowchilla spoke up, and they submitted enough written protests to vote down the fees in their subbasin. And Stephanie mentioned today that the penalties that they're going to be generating off of the Chowchilla subbasin landowners are going to be used for domestic well mitigation. Isn't that something that they voted against? And that could be seen as a property-related fee, again, in violation of either one of Proposition 218 or 26. And finally, in regards to these penalties, it still seems that there is a calibration issue. And there's a lot of ambiguity around it. Supervisor Rogers brought up the last time we were here 2 weeks ago about a California Highway Patrol gun. And if it's not calibrated, no ticket is going to be put on that driver. And we're going to have the same situation here. And also what Supervisor Rogers mentioned was we want to glide into this. And imposing a $246 fee along with a penalty within a very short time frame is not a glide. It's a free fall. And the Leadership Council spoke about residential water use. Why is it just landowners and farmers of landowners the ones who have to pay for all of this? So with that, I respectfully ask that this board not impose the penalty fees that are before you here today. Thank you.
Good afternoon to the board. My name is Stephen Shabage, and I'm an attorney in Fresno County, and I do represent a land grower in this area who's also a relative of mine, actually. But I have an interest in this controversy. My family were farmers, raised in farmers in Fresno County for decades, my parents since World War II. My brothers and I still have 80 acres there that we have in almonds. If this assessment were, and the base assessment of $246 an acre were assessed against our 80 acres, it would be over $17,000, which is about as much as I pay in property taxes and perhaps a little more. And it would provide no benefit to our property. It doesn't increase production, it doesn't reduce our costs, and it does not make any better use of our land. And we are also growers that use drip irrigation, which I'm now told is not as acceptable as flood irrigation, because flood irrigation, if used properly, helps recharge the groundwater. But before we start making decisions that are punitive in nature against these growers, I think you heard one gentleman say it's $700,000 a year. I don't care what his profit is, even in the best years, he cannot sustain that. You must consider a couple matters. Number one, as I recall, the first graphic put up showed average annual volume of water dropping from 2040 to 2090. In my business, as a lawyer, a judge might say to me, Mr. Shabazian, that's speculation. What is the weather pattern going to be between now and 2040? Will it always be the same weather pattern? Will we have no years like 2017, which was one of the highest rainfall totals the state has ever seen, and almost destroyed Oroville Dam? 2 or 3 of those years, and we'll not be here talking about that, we're talking about building more dams. So you'd be extracting water, not water, you'd be extracting money from farmers for projections that may not come true. Number 2, Proposition 218 in the Groundwater Sustainability Plan is to raise money for projects for, the term is groundwater stabilization. What I have heard so far from talking to members, and Mr. Titus, who's an attorney also who I've worked with on this, there are 0 projects under the groundwater stabilization plan that have been engineered or obviously approved. So you're collecting money in advance of the use of it or even the projected use of it. What is the purpose of collecting the money other than to bank it and perhaps pay staff and do more studies? So you should not be collecting money. You can call it an assessment. I call it a tax. There's no foundational difference between an assessment and a tax when you extract it from the grower. And finally, if you are trying to recharge the groundwater base, which is a reasonable project, as Mr. Titus noted and I noted, you must do so in a complete social and population process. You can't say these people have to pay more to do this, but the rest of Madera County doesn't. Every other person in Madera County, landowner, homeowner, business owner, processing plant, everybody that has land has to pay if you're going to do this. Finally, I would say, and I would advise my clients, all of them, make a run to the county assessor's office if you guys pass this, because I'd like to have my reassessments done. Take my property down from 20 or 30 or 40,000 an acre to try land farming, $300 or $400 an acre. That's what the county would get. And that would be a direct impact on the county's social services, fire and police protection. But let's consider all the expansiveness of what we're doing and table this matter for now. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rabbi Shor. I'm the candidate for State Senate, District 14, which includes Madera County. I just want to share with you that the solution for this problem is not extracting more taxes and penalties from the farmers. I am a former farmer in Madera County. I sold my land as well for the lack of water. And I live in Fresno right now. But the problem is that the state and some communities in the north, such as Sacramento and Stockton, use the fresh water to dump their raw sewage through the delta and into the ocean. Half of our water here in the valley is being dumped and being hijacked by the environmentalists. And I know that these farmers, as I used to be one, are sick and tired of all this. The job and your call is to stand up to the state because they need to fulfill their promises. They have already the money set aside, the resolutions have been passed, but they have not been done. So there is a stonewalling here and really wanting to punish the farmers. I implore you to vote no and not to assess the farmers and penalize them. Our valley, our state depends on ag. If we don't have water here, we have no life. This wonderful generations of farmers have been working hard. That's not me.
No, you got a minute, yeah.
There's a mistake. But anyway, they do not hog the water and build huge Olympic swimming pool. They use it in order to grow food for us. This is a national security problem. It's not the Madera County. And I tell you, I have family members that escaped communism that live in Israel right now, where I was born and raised, and they have experienced awful time. The idea is that there are solutions, and I promise to work with you and the farmers to stand up to all these Greens and environmentals and all this, as we say, Michiganers, because they want to kill the farms. And once they kill the farm, they kill California. This is the heart of the state. Thank you very much.
How you guys doing? I'm Jay Mulhill, Creekside Farming
Who was
Company.
that? I didn't catch that.
Jay Mulhill, Creekside Farming Company. I'm here as representative of the Chowchilla Growers Group to give you guys an update where we're at on everything. I know last week we gave a little update. So as of right now, we've formed our corporation. So corporation's up and running. Chowchilla Sub-Basin Growers Group is our name of our group. We have an EIN now, so that's up and running. We've worked on draft bylaws, so that's up and going as well. So we'll get those ratified. I know we have a meeting set with county staff next week on the 4th to keep the conversation going and moving to get towards where we discussed earlier, to make sure we can get to the end result of being sustainable ourselves. So I don't know if you have any questions for the group or anything for me to take back to them.
Yeah. What was the name of it? I didn't catch it.
Chowchilla Sub-Basin Growers.
Congratulations, Jay, on moving that forward because it's so important that you guys are on board to govern yourselves. And I would that all of Madera County followed that premise. I mean, I'd rather have you guys taking care of it than this board having to deal with it, or especially the state of California.
All right.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
And then on a side note, as a grower, let's take a little bit of time. I think we should hold off on this penalty phase of it. I mean, we have 6 months. DWR didn't accept our GSP, so we have time to, I think about this and figure out some other options. I think just like anything else, I think we as growers need time to unwind and kind of figure out, decisions to be made for next year's farming operation. We can't just abruptly say, pull the plug and walk away from everything. So I think as growers, if we have a little time to make decisions with you as a board, we can then start making decisions on our farming side of it as well to see what we need to let lay idle or how to start unwinding that instead of just pulling the plug on it abruptly. So I urge you, just like everyone else here, to maybe pump the brakes on deciding on penalties as of right now. I think something needs to be done. I think we all agree on that. So I just think we need a little bit of time. And now that the state's given us 6 months to reassess everything, I think this is the ideal time to look at that and work at that. So thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Noah Lopez with Madera Ag Water Association. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all today. So my comments are going to be regarding paragraph 2 of item 7 of the resolutions before you. MAWA strongly supports the inclusion of meters as an alternative measurement method in the resolutions. However, we do request that the board consider the following 2 concerns. First, MAWA believes that the sentence at the end of paragraph 2 of the resolution should be removed. I'll read that sentence. Quote, all growers submitted information necessary for the pre-approval will be maintained by the county GSA as public information. This information will undoubtedly contain private business records that should not be disclosed as public information. Currently, we're not aware of the same provision stating that an individual grower's ETAW as measured by ERAWatch is maintained as public information. So we think that that same protection of privacy should be afforded to growers that wish to use flow meters. And to the extent that this is a reflection of the Public Records Act, the Act speaks for itself and does not need to be restated in this resolution. My second comment is regarding paragraph 2C. The resolutions should be modified to allow meter calibration reports and field flow tests not only from the county GSA approved vendors, but also from qualified individuals, which are identified in the State Water Resource Control Board's surface water measurement and reporting regulations. And those regulations are cited in the letter we submitted to your board. So this would include California registered engineers, as well as licensed well drilling and machinery pumps contractors. And essentially, it would allow growers more options for meter calibration beyond the limited vendors which responded to your county's RFQ. And while also ensuring that these vendors would be qualified to make the assessment on the flow meters. So While we would like to see these two issues addressed before any action is taken on the resolutions before you today. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Jasbir Singh Sidhu. I represent an organization called PUG, Punjabi American Growers Group. We're about 300 farmers and about 100,000 acres in Madera and Fresno County. So I think listening to a lot of people, this is my second trip here, is I think you should truly listen to people who elected you, who put you there in those seats. What David said is absolutely correct. And I think holding off on a lot of the fees and fines make perfect sense. I mean, there is no doubt we have water issue. It's crisis. The question is, how do we go about solving them? And the key challenges are, I mean, if it's a national security issue, federal kicks the can, comes to Sacramento, Sacramento kicks it to GSA, to you guys, and the pie is only so big and you're going to cut it. So what's the real vision? What happens if it doesn't rain in the next 10 years? Are you going to basically shut down all the farms here? What happened? I mean, it's basically that 60,000 acre foot doesn't get recharged. The overflow is not there. Are there more penalties coming in? Where is the stoppage? So I think if there are drastic times, there are issues, there are solutions countries have found. Cloud seeding is one of them. If you guys truly think we have a disaster, we have an issue, I would have backbone to stand up to Sacramento and says we need cloud seeding. Make it rain, whatever amount, whenever, wherever, so at least you're not imposing fees on these people. Endangered Species Act, climate, you got to have enough backbone to stand up to Sacramento. If you don't, there are plenty of farmers here who would help you. France has done rallies. Do you want us to go and do that in Sacramento, camp out until somebody listens to you, not turn their backs on you? So a lot of this is, we really, I think, needs to look at it. Every discussion we're having is a very near short term. Your meters don't work. I mean, you talk about domestic wells. If Tom truly thinks there's nitrates and lead, are you going to put people in body bags and basically start counting how many are going to die every month? So I think you really need to sit back, look at a bigger view, have a vision that basically go off and address this very big issue in a fundamental way. I don't think you could do it yourself. You need Sacramento. You need people. People are here to support you.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Arshdeep Singh and I represent PUG, Punjabi American Growers Group, as Jaspreet said. I want to mention a couple of things. I wrote more points, but most of the people already covered those one. So the first one I want to discuss is sustainability. We talk a lot about sustainability, right? I'm a young grower, and I'm more worried about water situation than anybody else. I want the water. I have two kids, one 5-year, one 7 years old. I talk to my wife. I want them to be the growers. So I want them to have enough water when they grow up so they can do the farming as I am doing, as my dad did, as my grandfather did it, right? So, but the point I'm trying to make here is sustainability cannot be on one side. If these fees, these taxes, which is increasing every day, is not sustainable for me to do the farming, then I'll be out of business very soon, like most of the other people around here, right? We are not a big farmer, I'm a small grower. The last point I want to mention is, Robert mentioned about the bank account. Yes, I have a bank account and I cannot run over it. If I do, the bank charges me the penalties and everything else, right? So I keep a really close eye on my bank account. So I only pull whatever I have it. Same situation is with the water.
But the point we are all missing is there is a way to put money into the bank account. What are we doing to put in money into our bank account, which is our water? All the things we are talking about here is basically telling us cuts, 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 right? And the fines. Everything is on the demand side. Tell me one project which was done on the supply side of the water in the last 20 years. Nothing. So what I want you guys to do is, we live in a democratic setup. We don't live in a monarchy anymore. If something which we don't agree, we can push it back. And whatever you guys need from us, we are behind with you. We are right behind you. We'll push it back. But we cannot accept all these things which is not even feasible for us. That's all I want to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Laura Gutai, Madera County farmer. Last time I was here, I mentioned that I am a fourth generation farmer and most likely the last farmer on my side of the family. Even though I do have a daughter, she is sort of interested, but I don't think that the farm is going to be around for her. I wanted to echo, I believe it was Mr. Kevin Herman's, in thanking Stephanie Agneson and her staff for taking suggestions and going back to doing a little more research into the metering as an alternative. But I wanted to kind of combine a couple of issues that has been kind of rolling around in my brain the last couple of weeks. And Chairman Wheeler, you had mentioned it last time, and you also mentioned it today, about the 40,000 acres that was converted into orchards and almonds and pistachios. And that may have been a mistake. I wanted to kind of also, think about what about all the acres that were converted into these micro cities with a starting home price of a minimum of $250,000. And to bring that back to what were the issue at hand, we're showing empathy for these farmers and ranchers and their employees, as well as the companies that support us, the feed stores, the pump companies, and et cetera, plant processing plants. And all of those employees are lower income employees. Where are they going to live? We heard earlier about 5 disadvantaged communities and what their top 5 or top 4 issues are. Number 1 was sewer and water. While you're leveraging these fees to wide area growers, you also need to take a look at what are we doing building micro cities with, no benefit that I mean, very little benefit anyway, because it benefits the higher middle class to live there because they're the better schools, they're the better everything, but nothing for our employees. Just something to consider, some thoughts that I had. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Laura.
Hi there. My name is Larkin Harmon. I'm from Road 1, Dos Palace, Madera County. I'm a third generation farmer, and my family's actually been on the same ground for the last 80 years. I'd like to say that I don't think that we're ready to implement the penalty phase yet. I can give you a couple examples. I went ahead and dry land a lot of wheat this year, like Mr. Poitras. I took a couple acres out of production. When I say a couple acres, I mean a couple hundred acres. And with record wheat prices this year, I lost a lot of money by believing that we were going to implement penalties and you guys were serious about the allocations this year. Having said that, Erie Watch also allocated me 16 inches of water irrigated on my dry land wheat. So the reason that I say that we should not be implementing penalties yet is because we don't have a good measurement tool. We've talked about how complex meters are to install. And if you noticed on some of the diagrams that were shown in the Fresno State presentation, there's a certain amount of space a lot of times between your well and where it has to go into the ground or into your standpipe. There's not always that room there for that. And so, it's quite expensive to rework your irrigation systems, to put the meters in properly, and that costs a lot of money. I offer a solution, an alternative. I've offered it to Stephanie many times. There's companies out there that will jive a 3-point pump test with your PG&E records, and they're very, very accurate. And that's it's a third-party independent system that I think would be valuable for rebooting the Erie Watch system, since the Erie Watch system is so far off. It's actually approved by the state, and so that could be a third alternative to the meter installations. Another issue that I have for our personal farm is I'm on the county line, so I'm in between Merced and Madera counties, and it just so happens that the county line doesn't neatly go around my fields, but chops it in diagonally. I have wells that water in Merced and Madera, since our whole system is linked. There's so many questions that haven't been answered. Who's allocated that water? If water's pumped out of Merced and goes on Madera ground, does Madera get that? Am I going to get double fined when Merced starts allocating things? There's a lot of questions that haven't been answered on the ground floor yet, and you guys are going straight to the penalty phase. I think that we need to work on the more carrot approach to things. Let's work on the water market. Let's work on how, us growers can work within ourselves and, try and trade water. Maybe there's some people that are ready to retire. I'm not. I'm worried about my retirement. I've hopefully got another 25 years left to go, and employees that come to me on the 1st and the 15th, and I'm loyal to them. I'm just saying that we've got a lot of other questions to answer on the logistics of all of this stuff way before we get to the penalty phase. Thank you.
I'll let you three go, and then we're going to break for lunch.
Thank you. Good. I'm board. Mark Peters, grower, Madera County. Appreciate your time. I think we all need to ask ourselves, why are we taking the lead in having the highest rates and fees, as opposed to why aren't we in the middle of the pack? And I wasn't at the last meeting. I watched the video, scintillating conversation. But Jim Maxwell said, and I want to quote, that the Madera White area is the most burdensome of all 8 counties and all the GSAs in which we farm. So we are the most burdensome. We are the ones that are going to lose our farms first. We're going to lose all the jobs in the room because we're out in front. We need to be in the middle of the pack. That's the most important thing here. By the way, it's hard to separate the rates and the penalties. There's many people in here, including me, that want to talk about the rates, okay? But I understand it because they all combine together out of the farmer's pocket. Stephanie said in her presentation, the best recharge, she didn't use these words, is the grassroots recharge, the ones that the farmers do. Well, you know that in what we're paying for are 5 recharge projects. This is a page from Stephanie's December 7th presentation last year, totaling $185 million. And we're paying for that right now when the best recharge is the grassroots recharge that farmers do. We need to think about this differently. The second thing is sites. There is not a grower in Madera County that I know, maybe you know some, that believe that sites is going to happen, and yet we're being charged for sites reservoir. So you start to get my drift. Let me just go quickly to the 5 recommendations that I have. Number 1, ask staff to come back to you with a better understanding of all the local GSAs and all the local counties and combine both rates and fees so that you better understand whether we're leading the pack or not. We're leading the pack. Number 2, do an economic impact analysis on the grower. Now,
This was something that was discussed in March. David, you were an advocate. I have not seen an economic impact report done. I get the gist. I know what it's going to feel like because you've heard enough complaining, but that's number two. Just because I'm watching my clock, I'll keep going. Get growers involved. Right now, it's being assigned to growers, but grassroots starts with the growers. We had a lot of time in 2019 to talk about what we needed. We're not talking about the fees that are being imposed. Get growers involved. Number three.
You already did three.
Number four, thank you, Tom, thank you. Number four, retract your previous vote on the new rates. You have the ability to retract the vote. Heck, there's a lawsuit out there anyway. Retract it and start getting the growers involved so that we cannot come up with reasonable rates. And number five, delay making a decision on the penalties. Look, we've already got 6 months now because of what the state has said to us. Let's take the 6 months and go through the other 4 steps that I mentioned, and we'll come back at the end of that, which will only be in March. And oh, by the way, we hadn't even begun talking about penalties this March, and we were going to impose them this year. Next March will be fine for 2023. So enough said. If you want the written recommendations, I can get them to you. I have.
Good afternoon. My name is Jose Hernandez. I have nothing written. I'm speaking from my heart. I'm a farmer, crop consultant, Fresno, Merced, and Mesa Madera County. Besides the growers getting hurt, us getting hurt on these penalties, which it doesn't make sense. They're not the only ones getting hurt. These growers, they got hundreds, dozens, thousands of employees. They're going to lose their jobs. What's going to cause? Unemployment. Who's going to hurt? The families, the kids, their education. And please consider this. That's all I have.
Thank you. Can I have Jose's time? No? No way. They do that in Congress.
Hey, it's blinking right now. Keep talking.
Well, first thing I'd like to say is that our community lost a farmer, and it hasn't been mentioned. And we'd like to extend our condolences to Wayne Cedarquist, who passed away recently, 71 years old.
Ralph, we recognized him when we opened up
Did
the
you?
meeting today.
Oh,
It was, we have a
I'll take my
remembrance
time
every
back.
meeting. We
I'll
have a
take my
remembrance
time-
every meeting, and
Okay.
we remember him
Thank
right
you
out of the
then.
gate. And we talked about what a gentleman he was, and truthful, and.
He
and
was, yes. He was on the other side of my deal, but I didn't get a chance to talk to him yet.
So anyway, I just want to let you know, we did recognize him.
Okay, thank you. Well, we'll start again at 3 minutes, so I could just.
No, you had 10 seconds already.
Cut him off right now.
Let me tell you something. A lot was already said, all right? And I've said it many times. The projects are hocus pocus, sites, reservoirs, hocus pocus. Recharge could be done without spending multi-millions of dollars, all right? Land repurposing, that's a whole different subject, all right? The thing of it is this. This county has been turned against itself. It's an ugly thing to see when on purpose, by design, it has been divided. Farmers have been divided one against the other. There's a saying in the Bible that says, a house divided against itself shall not stand. That's the plan. That's the plan that we have here, because they want to retire 1 million acres of farmland from the San Joaquin Valley. And how are they going to do that? They have to have farmers take a position where they let other farmers go broke. That's not right. That's just evil. All right? The other thing is this.
You're talking, the state, I'm not supposed to point, the state, you're saying we can't do anything of the state. Well, you're just the ones that the state are using to put all these people out of work. So you're like a functioning agent of the state. What we need to do is push back against the state, and we need more surface water to put into the ground, and that hasn't been happening. Your bank account illustration. You can have a lot of money in the bank, but if somebody else gets your checkbook and starts writing things on it, you might have no money in the bank. And that's what's happening in this county. You guys are putting on penalties and fees that are going to be much more drastic than the shortage of water that's being used. All right? You are the ones that are creating a drought. You're creating the drought in everybody's economic situation. One thing that I think we need to do is we have 6 months now because this thing didn't work. We need to bring together all of the different GSAs in the area because they all pump water, and eventually they're going to all come into it anyways, and they're going to be penalized. So let's get them all here because it's very discriminatory to take all of the pain out of one area. And I've got to tell you, I've got more land in the MID than I do in the white area. But it's not right. It's not right. And that's why this room isn't filled with all kinds of farmers. But they need to be here because a straw in the ground is a straw in the ground, all right? But what we need to do is put more water on the ground. We have to push back, and we need to unite with people in the municipalities to push back against Sacramento, be more demanding of what we absolutely have to have.
Thank you. I gave you an extra minute, buddy. Thank you. Is there any online comments? Two? Okay, we'll do them right now.
Go ahead, Sue.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So
Who are you?
I'm asking that the
Who are
I'm
you?
asking that the board. My name is Sue O'Connor in Oakhurst, and I'm asking that the board not implement this penalty before absolutely necessary. And it seems clear that you have at least another 6 months. We don't need punitive and disciplinary penalties for grown people who are trying to run a business in our county. And that is not the role of staff to discipline county members to behave. We need to solve our water problems. It is ironic that we pump so much water into the ground to pull out rocks, but we're limiting farmers to grow food. In addition to that, Mr. Poitras, I appreciate you, I respect you, but your illustration about being overdrawn, you left out one of the key players. The state is the one that's overdrafting. They are pumping water into the ocean from our stored facilities. They have failed to build water storage, and they will continue to fail as long as counties continue to be their henchmen to penalize our farmers while they refuse to recharge our water. So I ask you, I implore you, support our farmers. Do not impose this penalty. Reassess the fee structure so that we don't put our farmers and all of their employees out of work. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jack Rice.
Good afternoon, Jack Rice with the Madera Ag Water Association. I'd like to briefly comment on 3 issues, and these are related to the request for solutions. So as we've been working to implement SGMA in Madera County and watching GSAs all around the state, we're learning what works, what doesn't, and where we need to make changes. And while a lot of things have been done well in Madera County, there are some areas where we need to adjust course. We described these in a letter that I think Mr. Lopez gave you this morning. I just want to briefly touch on those three issues. Number one, a budget for fiscal year 2023 should be created using our current conditions, and the fee should be adjusted accordingly. We looked at the rate study, and without any criticism of the work, current conditions are different than those predicted in the rate study's financial plan. There's three areas to touch on. The land repurposing program, which is really essential, will not likely be up and running by the end of 2022. So even while retaining some funding for a pilot program, you can probably reduce the necessary expenditures for next year. Sites reservoir has been discussed, and I think it's worth taking a look to see if some or all of that funding for 2023 can be delayed. Also, the rate study financial plan includes reserves of about $23 million by the end of 2027. There should be room in there to adjust the fees downward. When you take these three savings together, it looks like it'd be pretty easy to adjust this year's fees or fiscal year 2023 by about 50%. The second issue is satellite measurement. The reality is that this is one of the things we've learned. The reality is AeroWatch is really difficult to use, and it's lost the confidence of many farmers in the ag community. Measurements essential to GSP implementation. It's imperative that water users have confidence in the measurement system. The meter alternative is a key part of this, but we also need a satellite measurement system that's trusted. To rebuild this confidence, MAWA requests that you investigate immediately retaining one of the other vendors. Land IQ is pretty broadly accepted. I think it's used by approximately 30 or nearly 30 different GSAs. We request that you look into that quickly. Just expanding on the land repurposing, this is a really important program. It needs to be done right. Based on the meeting, there's a lot that the community needs to learn and contribute to on the land repurposing program, and I think it's important to take some time and develop that well. I'm not sure exactly, but my understanding was that the goal was to have that in place by the end of this year, and I cannot see that it'll be ready for deployment in that time period. So we ask that you make sure that program there's enough time to do it well and with enough time.
Okay, Jack. Thank you. I was going to stop this at 12:30 so we could go eat lunch, and I was going to finish, but I didn't think nobody else was going to talk, so I was going to try to get this all done. Now we got more I want to talk. You guys want to break for lunch? You want to
I think
finish
they
talking?
stopped talking because we said we were going to quit at 12:30, so there's going to be more.
You keep public comment open.
Yeah.
So it'll be open. We'll break now and we'll come back at 2 and we'll finish up.